Hello, everyone. The title of tonight's episode is The World Turns Differently in Your Mind. And so today I've been writing a lot, and I had this inspiration to bring to the attention of just the global stage that in some sense we're living in two worlds at once, and the world turns differently in our eyes, in our mind. And the reason for that is that a part of your intelligence identifies with the limitation, and a part of your intelligence wonders if it was the limitless, what reality would be like. The idea follows that our attention comes across like a double-sided sword, double-edged sword. It has an aspect of itself on objective reality, and it has an aspect of itself on subjective reality. That means you're not just paying attention to physical phenomena, you're also paying attention to subtler phenomena, which is self-generated. So in some sense, I'm looking outside the window, I see a light on the street, and I, in some sense, immediately say that's a street light. Like my mind just puts the image, puts the meaning there. And so, in some sense, the concept of the object is not in the objective domain. In other words, you could be standing in beside someone and they could feel like you're a certain kind of person, but behind your eyes, your personality is bound to momentary change. That means our attention moves, and as it does, it chooses to carry a certain amount of identification as it journeys through space and time. When we look at the war of religions and just pretty much many wars in humanity, it is the battle, in some sense, the battling of people's truths. In some sense, we as creatures, even though we find ourselves in the same physical world, but none of us have the same interpretation of it. So, in some sense, the leaders that are chosen for countries, all men are blind until they see the rest. For me, a personality ceases to exist once the whole picture is being seen. That means you went to the Louvre, you were looking at Mona Lisa's, like, you know, face, and you missed the whole painting. And you suddenly realize the whole painting. You see that a corner of your reality cannot possibly identify all that is. And hence, we're moving from corner to corner, and in some sense, subjectively being the creator of reality, but objectively being the creation of reality. We find ourselves in a sort of cyclical movement between the full and the empty, the chaos and the order. For me, waking life is just functioning in a certain frequency of dualities, subjectively speaking. In the Reboot Gita, which is a book you can just Google online, Reboot Gita on YouTube, and find the audiobook. In the Reboot Gita, there is a suggestion of an idea that says there are 4 states in this existence that the human being can experience. One state is the waking life. So right now you're listening to my talk in your waking life. As you're listening to my talk, and please, no, I wouldn't appreciate it if people listen to my talk, like put headphones on, listen to them before they sleep, and forget to, like, you know what I mean? Like, listen to my words when you're conscious. Now, there's the waking life. That's one of the state, the waking state. Then there is the sleep state, the deep sleep state, as if before we enter dreamland, we have to cross the river of nothingness. And so, and so, what I mean by that is that there's deep sleep, and in deep sleep, there's no personality to have a problem. There is no egoic identity to have to be dissolved for truth to be revealed. It's like none of the past patterns are there. Life is too dynamic to be taught to you on like as notes on a board. You know, like life is an experiential phenomenon. It means you have to, in some sense, calibrate yourself. You have to be like that caveman that took 2 random shit, and in its savageness sparked fire. And when it sparked fire, some other apes came and saw that fire, and they were like, holy shit, from this, whatever this ape did, he has brought a technology that can be adjusted towards the right aim. That means when you think of people, they're just energetic expressions through the day. If the person's tired, their personality will have less attention externally. As if before you actually step out of the house to go to work, internally, there's your body, like we can say a lot, there's energy first going to bring your mind to wakefulness. And then once there's the establishment of a wakeful mind, you can in some sense pinpoint yourself in the subjective realm. You can in some sense pinpoint yourself subjectively. That means you can be not only material existence accepts. You see, people on this planet are celebrated for their individualism. And what that means is how far that being has understood that their eyes are open once in this life, and the reason they have their eyes is because they're meant to see their life. And when you look at your life and you see them, all the territories of it that were uncharted or you had never paid attention to, it becomes an incredible experience to pay attention to the unknown and see the knowledge extend. Where does it extend? It extends towards the experiential alignment, which again comes down to the egoic design. The egoic design is pretty much how you became a self in this life. Like if you were a chunk of rock and Michelangelo was like seeing this rock, and Michelangelo has this quote where he says, I saw the stone and I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. It's as if nature is shaping you and in some sense setting you free to be an individual member of this civilization. Now, once you are at that core of individuality, life is still pretty purposeless. Okay? So that's where an individual's like, holy shit, if I live for me, if I just live for myself alone, like, okay, I'll enjoy maybe life, I'll be that guy who escaped karma, and then And then there's this thought that my life is as valuable as there is life on this planet. And there is not just simply life, thriving life. We are the animal that received the great vision on this planet. We are the species that stood up into its mind, into a subjective landscape where spirituality, believe it or not, begins once you pass the language threshold. If I feel like a person's past the language threshold, it's very interesting because then it's as if it's not like a kind of like, let me tell you, there's two kinds of friendship. There's friendships that arise from chaos, and there's friendships that arise from order. And in some sense, what I've noticed at least is that no person can expect another person to see them as they see themselves. Yet we honor. We honor the presence, the space that we have given every human being's body and mind. We honor the space of their advancement. That means like some people look at their friends and they think their friend is the person just they see right there. No. Their friend is the direction they're going. Do you see there is like any person who still feels they can be judged by external reality? Guess what? It's your external reality. We can get lost because we can urge ourselves to believe something we don't know the outcome of. And so because I consider man's nature to have arisen from peace, that means the universe, believe it or not, I don't disagree with the Big Bang that much. Like for me, the Big Bang, of course, it's a theory. That's why they call it Big Bang theory. But for me, it's an interesting notion that there was from suddenly a focal point of intense energy, there came an occurrence. That means prior to the Big Bang, there must have been a design for the reaction of whatever. And it becomes a very interesting thing because we say how does the Big Bang occur? It's like from nothing something came, okay? But or from like existence was just this endless pool of energy that eventually crystallized into a solar system or whatever. Yeah. So what I'm telling you is that there's two kinds of Big Bangs if you want to entertain that idea. Your Big Bang occurred when you noticed yourself in the movement of sight, or in the movement that moves in your sight. That means, believe it or not, I have I remember when I was in some sense maybe like a year old or 2 years old, and I remember being this child that was not identified yet. I was not a person yet, but I was present. There was awareness. Some spiritual communities treat the body as if it's like an Iron Man suit of matter for a soul that's like not in there. For me, I look at where we are asking the question. And right now, I'm in Earth. And when I look at Earth, there's a vast array of physical tasks. Yet at the same time, no performance is lost. The world, once you go within or self-inquire, actually becomes more observational. It becomes more oriented to your observance. That means before you were just reacting like a furious animal because its survival was not occurring. And then now you function through a sort of, you function through as if you actually pay attention to your senses and what you see, and you recognize sight is being contemplated in a space. And the space, our minds have chosen to understand it only through containment. That means when we looked at the universe, we instantly made it a room. We instantly contained it in laws and language. And so it's kind of realizing like putting a cup underneath a tap, like where water's flowing, and the cup becomes full to the brim and it overflows. So in some sense, there's this endless peak of evolution experience that occurs. Because trust me, people will get bored of who they are and then they want to change their world. And when the world physically doesn't change fast enough, or it's so complicated, the system, that the voices of people never reaches the voices of the decision makers, it is one of those things where I just look at society and I'm like, okay, let me walk in inefficiency for some time. And at the same time, I remember Tupac's lyrics where he says only God can judge me. A search beyond your mind means a search beyond your world. Your mind, the mind is a word we give to how your intelligence is or appears to be more than just the objects it is observing. As if we're like this sphere of, like our thoughts, like the subjective realm is like this sphere of a unique energy around you. And when you become aware of the world that only you can see because it arises from the collection of your experiences through this lifetime and who you are as an entity, as a creature that can even be conscious to enlighten and to entitle a world. For me, there's only one sort of enlightenment that can happen for the species, and it is a recognition of their experience beyond the boundaries of language. For me, someone with a new idea is better than someone who's written the past in a different way. Because what are kids' assignments in universities? They're just looking at the data and coming up with new forms of looking at the same data, or even getting new data. But the whole notion is that a part of life doesn't question the edge of life, and some people do. And some people, again, like I gave a talk today earlier where I said there's a Shakespeare quote that says some people are born great, some people achieve greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. And what's implied is that you see a critical condition of the world, and the heart of your mind just marches towards the solution. Your inspiration becomes not only oriented to physical accumulation. You don't want to just be a person who's just has the right stuff for the job. You want to also be the right person for the job. And this life is really, believe it or not, you're going to be working a lot. And people trying to they think getting tired, they think when a human being overworks, they in some sense become less energetic. And I have this idea where it's not true. The person actually taps into an energy that is inspired out of them feeling they're getting closer to the manifestation of their vision. That means the entrepreneur that is working like more than 100 hours a week, that person, I will say, they are having a sort of divine relationship with life where they have seen the fruits of when they truly put an effort to do something. When there's like as if till the shape of their outcome has not been witnessed, victory cannot be claimed. So you require to, a part of you wants to prove itself to you in a way where you're going to totally be changed once you realize it. Sometimes when I've asked the problem, I've changed so much before I can even answer. What I mean is like we are the mind stands multidimensional. Right now, I ask you, tell me the story of your life. We see you're using concepts such as your past, and you're using about, like, you separate, you classify. Just like how people create folders and put files and organize them on their computers' desktop. Similarly, we are doing that with our own stories of life, our memory. For me, my relationship with my memory has changed. It has changed in an incredible way. My relationship with the whole moment has changed per se, but when I say memory, for me, memory was an involuntary classification process in my subconscious. And I say involuntary because, like, sometimes, like, you change without even being conscious of it. What that means is you suddenly have a dream, and then you wake up and you've remembered that dream, and you're living that whole day with, like, the thought of the dream in your head, you know? And so you begin to see that the mind can simulate reality even when the body is, in some sense, the senses seem to be shut off. Not shut off, but like be recharging. So for me, most of my life is, I guess, at this point defined by an energetic creature, so I cannot avoid the winds of survival. But at the same time, I feel like there's nothing more divine than an opportunity. And humanity is a science project that has occurred after a billion years. It's a billion year valued opportunity. That means if you were valuing like a species by the years it took to evolve to even be able to acknowledge a sort of self development, you'd be like, wow, people are not living their proper lives because people are not acknowledging the humanity they're in. And therefore, they lose their humanity. They get lost in their own worlds of greed and selfishness because they feel that the world has to listen to their mind. And that's just the egoic approach. You stop having an ego when you realize you're not a thought, and you stop having a sort of abstract notion for your soul when you realize you're not your emotions, and when you realize that nothing can is like nothing and everything are existing at the same time, you reach a sort of reverse engineered depth of reaching. It's like before the problem could be shaped, you're there. And when you get to that point, you begin to see the answers to the problems can even become void. So you begin really leaving the atmosphere of language. Intelligence, or the greatest intelligence, is found in a clear mirror. And once you have an ability to witness the objective aspects of your moment and to also be conscious and, in some sense, be able to acknowledge the subjective presence and ask the subjective aspect of your moment, then you come to what I say is the pilot's chair. You acknowledge the moment where all imagery arises from, and you're in this moment, and then comes the capacity of skill. And then once you find the pilot's chair as a pilot of consciousness, you recognize the external responsibility of advanced communication. You realize that our species, the greatest thing it has come up with is not the internet, because there's something the internet was made for. The internet bows down to language, whether it's code or otherwise. Language is the greatest technology our species, in some sense, can use. And then underneath language, I believe it's art. And art does not mean just a bunch of people putting colors on a piece of paper. Creativity doesn't just mean somebody who's saying something like unique. It's an approach towards life. It's a recognition of these dormant energies of effort that, as if like a part of your innocence, never got a chance to respond to the chaos. So you, in some sense, try to tell yourself you're okay, at the same time realizing you're creating past clutter. For me, regardless of what happens every day I come home, like at night, before I sleep, regardless of what happens, I just say, what a day. And I just look at everything that had happened to that day, or I had retained consciousness of. And before I sleep, I kind of, it's strange, guys, but I thankfully honor the world, and I let it go. Because to hold on to change is like nobody has the hands to hold the universe. Truth's abstraction is a self-shaping phenomenon. I hope this talk has served my sponsors.